Folks, this is a guy I met at Kinko's the other day. I was in there getting some copies made, and he saw what I was copying, and I explained to him a little bit. He said, well, I got a hot rod. And I said, no kidding. Well, I might want to talk to you. Well, then he told me what it was, and I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. You look good. All right, folks, we're out here with Jerry Wilson, and he's got a 1968 Belvedere 440 GTX. And like I was saying, I met him by circumstance, by habit. I just was in Kinko's, and he saw what I was doing, told me he had a nice car, and invited me to come out and see it. And then we started talking. I mean, of course, you know, there's always an interesting story behind these cars. But Jerry, tell me, when did you buy this car?
Well, I bought the car new, I think in April of 1968 when I was about 22 years old.
No kidding.
Yep.
And you've had it all this time?
Had it all this time. I'm the original owner.
No kidding. And then for a while the car, well actually the car's got how many miles on it?
It's got about 45, almost 46,000 miles on it.
And the reason is?
Well, the reason is it was mostly driven on the drag strip, quarter mile at a time. I like to say on Sundays.
There you go. So folks, this car's got a lot of history. At one time it was a world record holder. But what's more interesting than that is actually how the car ended up on the drag strip. Now, you bought the car and you enjoyed it for how long before your incident?
A whole day.
A whole day. So folks, Jerry buys this car. He has it one day. Tell me what you decided a good idea would be to do, Jerry.
Well, don't do as I do. Do as I say. Don't be stupid. When you're 22 years old, sometimes you can be pretty ignorant and dumb. I got picked up doing 105 and a 35 right through the middle of town, drag racing with another car. What
town was that?
That was in Marion, Ohio.
Marion, Ohio. That's a big town. They probably wouldn't notice somebody dragster running through the middle of town, would they?
Yep.
So what happened then? So now you get a ticket for 100 and what?
105 and a 35.
105 and a 35. So obviously they're not going to just write you or let you go. What happens next?
Well, about 2 weeks later I was in the court and I was up in front of the judge, and of course, you know, he asked me why I was doing it, and I said, well, because I was stupid, and you know, this guy wanted to drag race me, and he said, well, you know, you're going to get some pretty stiff penalties, and I said, well, I guess I deserve what I get. And so he fined me $100, I think, was the speeding ticket at the time. And he fined me $1 for every mile an hour that I was over that, so it was running me about $170, which is a lot of money back in '68.
Wow.
And then he took my license for a year. And I asked him, I said, well, how about getting back and forth to work? You know, I got to get back and forth to work. And he said, I don't care how you get to work. He said, if I even see you on a bicycle. He said, a bicycle was a vehicle, and I'll give you a traffic violation. So I spent the next year without a driver's license. And so I had a friend of mine. I kind of had a reputation of being a little local drag racer, and people from different towns would come over, and one drag race meeting was with a different car. And back then you'd go out street racing and you really couldn't beat anybody because somebody always say, oh, my transmission was stupid.
They always had an excuse.
Yeah, I always had an excuse or some
Right.
problem.
Right, we've been there.
Since I didn't have my driver's license, I couldn't really race anybody. So there was a drag strip, Marion County International Raceway, which is about 30 miles from where I live. And I had a friend that had a car trailer, and I said, well, if you want to race me, we'll go over to that racetrack in front of God and everybody, and there won't be any excuses, and I can drive over there. And so that's kind of how the car got onto the strip. And from that day, I started racing on the strip, got interested in doing that sort of racing, and from then on, I had never seen the strip until 89.
Never seen the street.
Never seen the street until 19.
Quarter mile at a time, folks. What about that? 22-year-old kid goes and buys a car, does something stupid. Second day he has it, does something stupid, loses his license for a year. Now most people would have sold the car. I mean, because it would be like, I'm not going to have that kind of money tied up and I can't do it. But instead, Jerry didn't want to sell his car. He'd actually worked really hard to get this, because back in '68 it wasn't like now where they had cars sitting all over the lot and they're giving you rebates and all that kind of stuff. Jerry was telling me this wasn't even the car that he had ordered. He waited 6 months for a Roadrunner.
Roadrunner. I wanted a Roadrunner with a Hemi and an automatic in it.
And he couldn't get it because all they were building was 4-speeds at the time. So he went in after waiting 6 months, gave the dealer some grief. Well, 2 days before, this car here had come in, so they worked out a deal. Now Jerry's got way too much story to tell and get it all into 10 minutes. But folks, what I'm going to do is pull this camera off and get mobile, and we're going to take a walk around and show you exactly what this car is. All right, this is where we want to start. Now under here is all original except for a few things. See, it's a 440 Super Commando. That is the original top. It's not the original air cleaner. The original air cleaner is gotten away from him somehow. And he's also put this cool can, which back in the 60s when they were drag racing, this is how they cooled their fuel. And so it's kind of a period thing, and so he wanted to leave that on, and I don't blame him. And then down here he has got his own designed transmission cooler, because he told me back then he didn't have the money to buy one. So a buddy of his had an old air conditioner, and they made one. You know, that's racing. That's always been racing. So now the tires, he's gone back and done that. That's all that's the way that it came. Everything's back the way that it was.
Pretty much the way it was. The
Except for a few little knickknacks here and there. But look, I mean, look at the front bumper on this thing. That front bumper is original. Original chrome. It's not even been re-chromed. The car's been repainted once. Yeah, correct?
Been repainted once after I retired it from racing.
Right. And it's stock color except for one shade.
One shade. I had it painted one shade darker because back then the original colors were notorious for fading.
Right.
And I didn't want it to fade, but paint's got a lot better since '68, since the '60s until you know, the '90s, and this didn't fade. So I expected it to fade and get closer to the original color over the years, but this paint job here is probably 15 years old or so.
Wow, it looks good. And this interior. Now this interior is sat in storage for a while too. Understand that, folks. He was telling me that for a while he was racing a class where he had nothing but a seat in here and a roll bar. But again, you know, it's the thing where Jerry didn't throw this stuff out. He just set it aside. And you know, he said I gave him credit for being very smart about that, but he said that's just kind of the way it worked out. He had a big garage and he didn't want to throw it out, so he just saved it. And in the end, that's gonna make a big difference on this car, because I mean he's got so much documentation on this car, folks, that we could do a whole video just on that. And what I've asked him to do is just to show me just a couple of pieces of it over here in this book as we were going through it that I found interesting. But I want to make sure that you get a good look before we get to that book, because I have a feeling we'll eat up the rest of our time there. It's an automatic. That's what he wanted. Back in the day, even back in the day, they'd figured out that automatics was the fastest way to get from first to second.
Couldn't outshift a C6.
You just can't outshift a machine. And here, now at one time it had a lot more stickers on it, but here's some of the stickers from when he was drag racing. Did a lot of the drag racing in southern Ohio, right? So, and look at this, folks. Obviously, you knew he'd had the window sticker. But what was funny about this is that we were looking through some of this other documentation, and he had the motor rebuilt a few years back. And this is the original 440 in it, but it's been rebuilt. And it cost a little over $2,000 to rebuild the motor. And then you can see he only paid $3,900 for the car brand new. So, how times have changed. And then here's where he set a world record. What was the time that you ran on that?
I believe it was 11:95.
11:95.
It's so long since I looked at it, but it was about almost a second faster than the existing record at the time.
Wow, he just crushed it. And then, this is one of the first cards that they gave you at the dealership.
It was a 50,000 mile warranty card that came with all the new cars. But since this car was the high performance 440, it had a lot of different things in it, they actually voided that warranty.
Yeah, look at this.
This was a sticker that they gave.
Basically it says he's got 1212 and they're not taking care of the motor. But he has documentation. This original build sheet was up underneath the seat when he took the seats out. He kept it. I mean, that's just incredible, because he's been able to keep it out of the sunlight and all that. And you know, I mean, the paper's still in good condition. But it's funny, you can see the spring marks where it was onto the spring. That's what that design through it is. But wow, Jerry, what a cool car. All I can say, brother, is I wish I had 30 minutes to put this one on video, because I mean, it's very rare I get to come out to somebody's house, see their car, shoot it, ask them questions, really get the background before we get started on it.